Paul Levinson, and welcome to Light On, Light Through, episode 401. My interview with Dan Abella about the Psychedelic Film and Music Festival that will take place in New York City next Saturday, all day next Saturday, December 14th, 2024. And we talk about all kinds of interesting things, really an expansion of what most people think psychedelic means. It's not just LSD and the 1960s. It's much deeper and wider and more than that. And this will be a festival in which there will be a lot of fascinating short movies and actually a play that Dan wrote. Anyway, we talk about all those things and much more. We're also joined for a bit of the conversation by Kendall Brown, who is operations manager for the festival. And I do want to mention you may hear some noise in the background, some conversation. This is because Dan loves to record these interviews in a diner somewhere in New York City. Who knows, maybe someday it'll become a famous diner. But Dan certainly loves the diner, and so we hear voices in the background, even dishes clanking. You know what? I love that. I think it adds to the ambience. So here, without any further ado, is our conversation about the Psychedelic Film and Music Festival, which will take place at the Producers Club, 358 West 45th Street in Manhattan, next Saturday, December 14th, 2024.
The Light on Light Through podcast.
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
Hey, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Can you hear me?
I hear you fine.
Okay, good. I got actually my friend over here. You met him at the PKD. It's Kendall.
Hey, Kendall, how you doing?
Doing good. How you doing then?
I'm doing good.
Yeah. At this moment, we were actually just talking about the play which we're doing and the psychedelic festival. Yeah, Kendall's gonna help me out. He always does, actually.
Okay.
Projectionist. Yeah.
All right. So listen, I'm recording all this, and Kendall can come into the conversation anytime. So why don't we start? And our viewers, of course, will know who you are, Dan, because you've been on the show like about 120 times already, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But why don't you introduce Kendall to our viewers?
Well, Kendall's one of my partners here at the festival. He's been with us since the beginning, since year one. He normally, at the Psychedelic Festival, he normally runs the projection, the computer, making sure everything runs smoothly. And he's also helping me with the play, which we're doing, which has to do with vets and PTSD. And so we're hoping to reach out to some. Kendall himself is a vet. So we're hoping to reach out to some people in the future who are interested, because this is a free play that we'll be having at the Psychedelic Festival.
Great. What's the name of the play?
It's Timothy X's journey from PTSD to wellness.
Okay.
So the backstory is that this is a reenactment, because I've actually, as I mentioned in other interviews I have with you, I work with some vets, and I work with people with trauma. And this is a basic reenactment with a little bit more dramatic for the audience. But what makes this play also unusual is an immersive experience. So Kendall will be handling the sound design and video clips, which will be showing during the play itself. So it's not just talking heads. It's a whole immersive experience.
Right. Listen, I don't think I've ever been in like an old-fashioned physical play myself. I actually played the lead role in a radio play. I think we've talked
Okay.
about previously. It was made from the first chapter of my novel, It's Real Life and Alternate History of the
Right.
Beatles. And I played Pete Fornatel, which was a real pleasure because I knew Pete. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us, passed away about 10 years ago. But
Right.
he had a Queens accent. I have a Bronx accent. They're not all that different, and so it worked very well. But tell us now more about the overall festival. When is it going to take place? What is it about? How many times have you done a festival like this? Because you are someone who does as many festivals as I practically teach classes at Fordham University. I mean, you seem to be doing like 5 or 6 festivals a year now, right?
Right. We do actually, we do three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do three. So the little backstory on the festival, we first started with the PKD back in 2012. And then PKD is a Philip K. Dick Film Festival in honor of the writer Philip K. Dick. And so we've done those festivals we've done in New York and LA and in Germany, in France, and Poland. It's fairly international, but we also back in 2017 we realized that we needed our own New York Sci-Fi Festival because while we were going around the world, we said, well, what about New York people? So we started the New York Sci-Fi Film Festival. Now, and it's what, in 7th year or something, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. And then in 2018, what happened is I met Dennis McKenna, who is a brother of Terence McKenna, who was a well-known psychedelic writer and researcher. And he suggested that we do a play. So we not pay. We actually do a festival with psychedelic films. So the first thing that came out, we're going to be just talking about people, taking acid. I said, no. Psychedelic films that specifically are designed to alter states of consciousness. And we talked about film writers and like Jodorowsky or Gaspar Noé, director writers. So that's how the idea came about. So and we've been doing. So what this festival is a mixture of various genres. It's like there'll be one block that focuses on experimental films, one block that focuses on surrealistic films, one block that focuses more on psychedelic, which is like we call it under the influence. One block that focuses on sci-fi / horror, and then we got 2 blocks on documentaries. So we attempt to cover the full range of the psychedelic spectrum. The most important message I want to get out to people is that psychedelics is not just about taking hallucinogens or mind-altering substances. In fact, the original definition of psychedelic is that which revealed to the mind. So anything that covers the full spectrum, it could be chanting, drumming, praying, can have a psychedelic experience. Mountain hiking. So,
Right.
so in the festival, we try to show different aspects of the psychedelic experience. For instance, we have one play that focuses on breath work, holotropic breathing. And in fact, the director will be showing up here. And and how to, it's basically where a person breathes very quickly over a course of an hour, they start having unusual experiences. It's called holotropic breathing. And a group of PTSD of soldiers who had PTSD, but underwent ayahuasca ceremony, and now they feel much better. Then we have the play itself, which is a reenactment of something, how do I deal with PTSD from a different perspective. And then we got different blocks that, again, focusing on expressionism or surrealism, abstract art, and so on. So from that point of view, experimental film, like Stan Brakhage, for instance, people actually working on film and scratching it and doing all sorts of things. So we try to cover the full range of the psychedelic world.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the psychedelic world. I was just actually interviewed a couple of weeks ago. I'll put a link to it up in the show notes to this episode. By the way, a link also to a web page that you'll give me, a URL where people can find out more about the film festival and about the play you're talking about. But I was just talking a couple of weeks ago about Hegel, the philosopher, and I don't know if you're familiar with this concept. He called it the spirit of an age. And what he meant is that there are certain times when certain ideas get out there, become embedded in the overall culture, and express themselves in all kinds of different media. So, for example, a few years after Hegel himself died, you had the Impressionistic age, in which you had Claude Debussy's Impressionistic music, Stefan Mallarmé, Impressionistic poetry, and other Impressionistic people who actually did painting, like Manet, Monet, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. So in these different media, they were all expressing the same thing. And it always occurred to me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one this occurred to, that the 1960s, the spirit of that age, which at least you and I lived through, I'm not sure if Kendall is old enough to have lived through the 1960s, but the spirit of that age, certainly the second half of the 1960s, was the psychedelic sense. And you had Timothy Leary, you had the Beatles and other groups, psychedelic music, you had psychedelic art, and so on. So I guess the question I have for either or both of you is, your festival and the work you're looking at, they're all pretty much new movies. Your play is new. It's basically psychedelic work that was created in the 2020s. It's not, let's say, a retroactive, you're not going to show Les Bicyclettes de Belsize, that crazy psychedelic movie that was made in the late 1960s, and Engelbert
No.
Humperdinck had a hit record singing the song.
It's all original independent film. So everything that we'll be showing will be stuff that's currently being done or has been done in the last few years. And it's not a revival of the 60s psychedelia, but it's a little bit more up to date, incorporating all the beneficial effects of psychedelia. So the focus is, because unfortunately in the 60s, as you know, there were a lot of casualties from that, because psychedelics, and even Timothy Leary mentioned very clearly about the setting and the dosage, and that was completely thrown out the window. So people ended up taking, say, LSD under uncontrolled, let's say going to the middle of Times Square and taking LSD, and what psychedelia does, it amplifies what the state of consciousness already a person is in. So the person is feeling depressed, taking a psychedelic may actually make it worse. So part of our goal is to raise awareness about these practices that are designed to break through the blinkers that most of us have of working in, especially in cities like New York, very hard, well-defined blinkers, and be able to access altered states of thinking, of awareness, whether it be a runner's high, or a dancer, or chanting, or drumming, or the dervish dance. They're all attempts to break out of the reality tunnel, quoting Robert Anton Wilson, that we unfortunately are trapped in, or many of us are trapped in by our day-to-day work. And it's essential, especially now when there is so much focus on technology, everything from the apps we use to the computers and so on. And although that may be very useful, the downside can also be that there is too much left brain work, way too much left. And with the psychedelics, especially someone under psychedelic influence, whether it be meditation, hypnosis, holotropic breathing, where you see that the right brain lights up like a Christmas tree, and the left brain kind of goes into sleep. So what we're seeing is a real shift, a neurological shift in left brain activity. So more than ever, we know that these things are good. For instance, for many years, people used to question the beneficial effects of meditation. They said, well, meditation kind of calms you down. But now the latest research suggests that you meditate for 3 weeks, for 15 minutes, you'll definitely, there'll be a shift in the size of the amygdala in your brain, which is the size associated with the flight and fight response. 3 weeks. So that we actually changing our own brain when you meditate. So for the better. So I this is about raising awareness. I mean, because unfortunately, a lot of people are still very much in the dark about psychedelics, meditation, and so on. So we're trying to get more awareness out, so they can each one figure out which is the practice they want. Which one is not every psychedelic practice is good for everyone. Some people should avoid taking any kind of psychedelics like botanicals. Focus more on meditation or praying or fasting. But I'm sure there's something good for someone out there. One technique. So that's our goal, to raise awareness about the possibilities of psychedelics, and also to raise awareness about the plight of the veterans who are there's still many of them, despite the ayahuasca ceremonies and tourism, many of them are suffering. So our goal is to get the word out that there are alternatives that they should take advantage of and really help. So our goal is more towards the beneficial use of psychedelics or psychedelic practices for all of us.
Well, I think that's very important. And just to be clear, you're saying that people can have psychedelic experiences without taking psychedelic drugs.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
For instance, if you were to run for say runner's high is actually neurologically high. The body is producing massive amounts of natural opioids or endorphins, which is a natural high. DMT, which is probably the most powerful hallucinogen, is actually created by our own brain every night when we go to sleep. So the fact that psychedelics impact us that means the brain already is doing these substances, creating these substances at a much smaller scale. So it suggests that there is a relationship, but it has to be carefully monitored and observed, not thrown. Now we're gonna take psychedelics out of just because it's a cool thing. Because as I say, you never know where that will take you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and for a variety of reasons, because I have hardly ever used any drugs whatsoever. And it's not because I'm some kind of Puritan, it's because I honestly feel that I'm naturally high.
Exactly.
Not all the time, but basically, I enjoy life. I get a lot just like walking along a shore, and the waves are coming in, the breeze is blowing in my face. That to me is like a psychedelic experience, because it's lifting me out of this world. And so I think it's very good that you're focusing on that aspect of it, because as you're saying, to some extent, psychedelics has been incorrectly equated with LSD, whatever that drug might be.
Right, and the bad things that came about it. Yeah, and it is your psychedelics is like you're giving a revolver to a 5-year-old, and if you don't tell them how to, and there's some people just should not be using psychedelics, period. But psychedelic practices, I think whether it be meditation or yoga or breathing, I think they're all good. They're all good. They're good. Someone once said that if you take a botanical, it's like if you go up a mountain, taking a botanical is like taking an elevator to the summit. Whereas if you're doing breathing or meditation or Buddhist practice, it's like you're actually walking up the mountain. It's a big difference. So when you go out and look at the ocean or feel the breeze, that's I'm sure right now if we ever get to the point where we can start measuring the amount of psychedelics in your blood, or opioids, you might find there will be a significant increase. Kind of reminds me of Ram Dass, who was one of the gurus of the psychedelic age, a colleague, a contemporary, Timothy Leary, he approaches a guru in India and he says, listen, I want you to take the acid and let me know what you think. And the guru takes it, and then after an hour, Ram Dass is puzzled as to why he's not tripping. He says, well, do you feel anything? Yeah, well, this is how I feel all the time. So there you have it. I mean, I think there's something to be said about people who are naturally high. They're high on life. It's not just a metaphor, but neurologically speaking, there may be something there in their bloodstream that suggests that they have an unusual, they create an unusual amount of opioids. Maybe those who are chronically depressed might need a boost in some way, not necessarily botanicals, but perhaps meditation, perhaps other practices. At the end of the day, I like to think that we own our inside our brain is the world's best pharmacy, and it's perfectly illegal. You can access peak state experiences without having the fact that we have to go and get it suggests something more about our culture than and our deficiency in that than the botanical itself.
By the way, that's a great quote there that you just gave us and everyone who's watching this video or listening to the podcast, that the best pharmacy is inside our own brain.
Absolutely.
I really like that quote. How many days will the festival be going on?
Well, this festival is only one day, but it runs from early in the morning, from noon till about midnight.
Okay.
So I think we'll be screening over about 30 films or so, 30, 20, 25 to 30 films from all over the world, from Taiwan to Germany, South America, Argentina, US, England, just about France. And they cover the full gamut of the psychedelic experience. I think there's something there for everybody.
Yeah, that sounds very, very impressive. And when exactly will your play be performed?
My play is at 4 p.m. Saturday, December 14th at the Producers Club. And it runs for about 45 minutes and it's free. All you need to do is RSVP us and we'll add you to the list, and you'll be privy to an immersive experience, like one of a kind immersive experience.
Why don't you just spell out the email that people can contact you through, or the URL? I will post it anyway in the show notes, but just in case anyone's listening.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So info at Psychedelic Film and Music Festival.
Okay, got it. For our listeners and viewers, I'll actually have this, of course, written out, but in case you're driving someplace, and you can't look and you want to just hear it, that's why I asked.
And for those those who are from Fordham, there'll be other college students from Brooklyn College, I believe. I think one of the directors inviting some people from Brooklyn College. So it'll be a nice get together for, get to know other college kids.
Well, very good. And the date again is December 14th, right? Did I get that right?
Yes, December 14th.
Okay.
2024. That's actually next Saturday. Yeah.
It's next Saturday. And I actually I'm happy about that. I love announcing things the last minute. It makes it even that much more exciting. When you announce something that's going to happen a couple of months from now, who cares?
Oh man, people have
what you're going to be even doing a couple of months.
They won't remember. Yeah, people, you got to give it to them literally like 3 days before the event. Otherwise, they'll forget.
Exactly. So this is going to go up again for people who may not be familiar with this. Right now, the date is December 6th and about 6:23 p.m. I'm going to have a video of our conversation up on YouTube within an hour or two, and either later tonight or tomorrow morning, I'll put it up also just audio on our podcast, which is called Light On, Light Through, which in case that phrase doesn't sound familiar to you, that's something that Marshall McLuhan came up with to describe the difference between light bouncing off an object, that's light on, and light coming through an object. For example, a stained glass window, a
Right.
television screen, a phone, or a computer. And of course, McLuhan didn't know about these kinds of phones back in the 1960s, but you probably know this, and it's worth letting all of our listeners know. McLuhan was very interested in the left brain versus the right brain. He used to
Yeah.
go around when he gave his lectures. He had this great chart, and I'd love to know what happened to the original of the chart. I mean, I've seen many photographs of it, and I've seen it in the flesh, although the chart wasn't made out of flesh. But I've seen it in person, and it was basically, a chart in which one half of it showed what the left brain was doing, the other half showed what the right
Exactly.
brain was doing.
And
Listen,
and
go
on
ahead.
that note, and circling back to what we started with, Paul, is that there was a scientist slash poet named Goethe. I'm sure some people have heard of him. And he actually, his way of seeing the world, of presencing the world, was more right brain. So Goethe's approach to understand the nature of colors and the nature of reality was a lot more right brain context versus the way Newton was approaching, which is more a linear classification. So that's something that's being more explored. So there is a union that's coming real soon between science and various philosophical systems. And we'll be basically talking about the same thing, but because of the language barrier and the words themselves, now that's being erased thanks to a lot of writers who are promoting this. So it's we're closer to there than a lot of people think.
Absolutely. Kendall, would you like to share any thoughts about the play that you're going to be a part of and, this overall festival with our viewers and listeners?
Well, just looking forward to it, to see how it pans out through the performances of the participants in the play, and then my role in helping out with the cueing of certain elements in the play, and that's pretty much it. That. And I think it's
Well,
going to turn out really good and a good experience for all those involved.
it sounds really good. Is this the first play you've ever worked on, or do you tend to write and do work and
Oh,
play?
well, I wrote screenplays, little projects that would like to see producing them myself in the format of animations. I do a little bit of that.
So when you
And,
write a screenplay, do you prefer basically writing the whole story yourself from scratch, or do you prefer finding someone else's written story and you create a play out of that story?
pretty much my own story. Write my own story notes and then just kick out a screenplay based on that, all from scratch, and pretty much.
So you and Dan collaborated on this screenplay. You both, not a screenplay, this play. You both wrote it
Well,
together,
in the
or
written aspects of the play that's going to be at the festival, that's pretty much Dan did the writing on that.
okay?
So this is the second time that we do the play. The first was in 2018, and it was very well received. And it's really, I thought Kendall and I were talking about it because I do think that this is a good play that really focuses on the vets' own personal challenges as they have to return back to the civilian world and not be able to talk to people about their war experiences. And I think it's one of a kind. I mean, honestly, a lot of places out there deal with PTSD do more in the background, but this is a reenactment of a session, a successful intervention that involves metaphors like the theater of the mind, how a lot of Marshall McLuhan's idea of the image, the internal images that we process and how these processes are represented in films. In the same way, we're running films inside our heads that sometimes there is no off switch. Like you have a song that you listen to, right? And it goes on forever. You hate it, and the more you try, well, a lot of these vets were they report the same thing. They're running. The war is over, but it hasn't ended in their mind. They're still running those films. So this key is how do you get to go inside the mind of the vet or help him go inside, and he can build as an off switch so those films don't run anymore. And that's the key with the play. So it really it's not just about it incorporates a lot of elements which haven't been why I kind of explored in the book The Theater of the Mind. In fact, the play is in the back of The Theater of the Mind. It's the last 20 or so pages, but it incorporates and I really feel really happy about the way, and it also has to do with our humanity, being able to preserve our humanity. Because a lot of vets, when they see their brothers die, they're also their survivor's guilt. And why did they die and I didn't die, right? So that a play deals with that. It's I think it's Kendall. He helped me on year one, 2018. So we're gonna do it again.
Well, I think you're doing some very important work. You know, death obviously is something that all human beings experience around them, but unless you're in combat, you're usually somewhat prepared for it because you know your parents, your grandparents get older or whatever. But being in combat, which I haven't been, but I can understand, that must be something that puts a tremendous pressure on the human mind, because to see that death right around you and it's among people
Exactly.
you love to know and you've depended upon them, you know, to save your life, that must be an excruciating experience.
Well, in fact, in combat, I mean, a lot of tribal cultures they welcome the warriors because they know that the warriors have seen an aspect of reality that we've never seen in the civilian world. So it's a kind of enlightenment. See, if you think of enlightenment simply of meditating and or no, enlightenment comes from going to the very edge of reality, where any moment could be the last. And that's enlightenment. I mean, being able to deal with it, not just react to it. But so this takes this whole spin on. I had some bad friends who are Marines, and they say, "Yeah, I would go back to Afghanistan in a minute because the kind of brotherhood and solidarity you won't find, or it's very hard to find in the civilian world."
Yeah, well, that's extremely, you know, crucial, and it's also, unfortunately, not enough attention
Yeah.
uh, is paid to it. By the way, I hope that you will be video recording or have
Well,
somebody that,
absolutely. We'll be we'll have someone. In fact, we got to get someone there to videotape the play itself.
yeah. And what I'll do once you have a video of it and it's posted somewhere, I will, and again, for our viewers and listeners, I always update the show notes to everything that I post, all of these interviews, because people are doing other things in their lives that might be relevant to what we're talking about now. So obviously, what could be more relevant than your play, what you're telling us about?
Exactly.
As soon as that's up, I will insert it into the show notes for this video. By the way, there's a show that I've been watching. I'm trying to think about where it is. It's a show, it's a TV series about a combat team in which the leader of the team is a woman, deals with a lot of these issues. How does she relate to her family? You know, she has an important mission that she's the only one who can go on this mission. The husband doesn't want her to go on it. They have two kids, and you know, I'd highly recommend it. And again, I'll put in the show notes the name of that show on what network it's on. I think it's on, I don't know, maybe either Paramount Plus or Peacock. I'm not sure. You know, my memory is, you know, pretty good, but the older you get, it's almost like your memory becomes more like a piece of Swiss cheese than a complete memory. You wind up forgetting little things here and there. But I think rather than take any drugs to help that, I'll just take a nice walk along a seashore and breathe in
Yeah,
the
that's
sun.
what it does it for you. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so listen, it was great talking to the both of you, and best luck with the festival. Again, as our viewers and listeners know, I've been talking to Dan about his festivals for at least, what, about 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years. I think Dan has the dubious distinction of being the most interviewed person on my podcast and on the video versions of the podcast, and so far it hasn't put Dan out of business. So I guess that's
No, we really enjoy speaking with you, Paul, and I really appreciate you supporting us and really being there, and definitely being. Don't be a stranger. Drop in one of these I know that we saw you last year at our PKD festival, but doors are open anytime you want to come in. Just check us out. Check out our other festivals. Let us know.
I will. Oh, and by the way, I just remembered, speaking of Swiss cheese, the name of that TV series, it's Lioness is the name of the series.
What's
Like
the name?
Lioness, Lioness.
Lioness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I highly recommend it because it deals with some of these issues. There's not only combat in the series, there's a lot of soul searching
Oh,
and people.
is that on Netflix or is that on
That I'm not
mainstream
sure. It's
Apple TV? Or is that where
it's neither on Netflix nor Prime Video. It's on one of the
on
others.
video? Okay.
I don't think it's on Apple TV either. It's
But definitely keep an eye for it.
yeah, you might enjoy it. So listen, it was great talking to you again, Dan. Good meeting you, Kendall. Best luck with all this, and we'll see each other again soon.
Fantastic. You have a good evening, Paul. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
The Light on Light Through podcast.
And I hope you enjoyed that conversation about this psychedelic film and music festival that will be taking place next week in New York City, December 14th, 2024. I'll be back here soon with another episode of this podcast, Light On, Light Through. Could be another interview, could be another review. Who knows? In the meantime, stay safe, stay sound, and enjoy.
The Light on Light Through podcast.
Athens, 2042 AD. She ripped the paper in half, then ripped the halves, then ripped what was left again into bits and pieces of history that could have been. Sierra Waters had read once that, years ago, it was thought that men made love for the thrill, while women made love for the sense of connection it gave them.
Curled Up with a Good Book says, Sierra Waters is sexy as hell. You can find out more about The Plot to Save Socrates by Paul Levinson at theplottoSaveSocrates.com.
Your brilliant story, it's real life.
Paul Levinson spills codes about an ancient biotech war raging on in secret for centuries.
Reading words.